On December 26, 2025, Israel, led by Prime Minister Netanyahu, became the first UN member to recognize Somaliland as a sovereign nation, breaking a silence that had lasted for decades and sending shockwaves through the international community. This bold move shattered decades of international consensus and diplomatic caution, catching many world leaders off guard. Israel's recognition included the establishment of full diplomatic relations and ambitious plans to integrate Somaliland into the Abraham Accords, a framework that has already transformed regional alliances. Overnight, the quiet, self-governing nation of Somaliland was thrust into the global spotlight, its leaders suddenly fielding questions from journalists around the world. In a swift and unexpected response, South Sudan quickly followed suit, signaling its own intent to recognize Somaliland, a powerful gesture from Africa's youngest nation, itself born from a long and difficult struggle for self-determination and international acceptance. The combined actions of Israel and South Sudan have upended the status quo, challenging the world's long-standing refusal to acknowledge Somaliland's independence and forcing a new conversation about borders and legitimacy in Africa. For over 30 years, Somaliland has operated as a de facto state, stable, democratic, and self-reliant, while the world looked away, bound by fears of redrawing colonial borders and igniting regional instability. Now, that inaction is no longer tenable. The world must confront the reality on the ground. Two nations, each with distinct histories and interests, have forced a global reckoning, making it impossible for the international community to ignore Somaliland's claim any longer. The implications are profound. The very definition of statehood and the principles of international relations are now in question, as countries debate whether to follow Israel and South Sudan's lead or maintain the old order. For Somaliland, this is a long-awaited moment of validation, a chance to finally step onto the world stage as a recognized nation. For Somalia, it's an existential threat, one that could reshape its borders and its future. For the world, it's a new chapter in the contest for influence over the Red Sea, a region already fraught with competition and strategic interests. The Horn of Africa's diplomatic map has been redrawn, and the aftershocks of these historic decisions are only beginning to ripple across the globe. Somaliland's claim to statehood isn't a typical secessionist bid. It's rooted in a unique colonial history that sets it apart from other independence movements in Africa. Unlike many regions seeking autonomy, Somaliland's quest is based on a distinct legal and historical foundation, not just ethnic or regional aspirations. Once the British Somaliland Protectorate, it gained independence in 1960 and was briefly a recognized state before voluntarily uniting with Italian Somaliland to form the Somali Republic. For a few days, Somaliland stood as a sovereign nation, with international recognition and its own government, before choosing unity in hopes of building a stronger Somali nation. The union quickly soured, leading to decades of repression and violence, culminating in the Hargeisa Holocaust of the late 1980s. Tens of thousands were killed and entire cities were reduced to rubble, forcing many to flee their homes and seek refuge elsewhere. After the collapse of Somalia's central government in 1991, Somaliland revoked the union and reasserted its independence. This bold move was driven by a desire for stability, peace, and self-determination after years of turmoil. In the decades since, Somaliland has built a functioning state, its own government, currency, army, and a record of peaceful democratic transitions. It has held multiple elections, maintained internal security, and fostered a sense of national identity, all without international recognition. Despite meeting all legal criteria for statehood, recognition has been blocked by the African Union's rigid adherence to colonial borders. The AU fears that acknowledging Somaliland could set a precedent for other separatist movements across the continent. But Somaliland isn't seeking to create a new border, only to restore an old one, a crucial distinction now recognized by Israel and South Sudan. This historical continuity strengthens its legal argument for statehood. Their actions signal a willingness to move beyond dogma and engage with Somaliland's reality, opening the door for a new conversation about legitimacy, sovereignty, and the future of African borders. Israel's recognition of Somaliland is a calculated move, reflecting a broader strategy to secure its interests in a rapidly shifting region. This decision is driven by the immense strategic importance of the Red Sea corridor, a maritime highway that connects the Mediterranean to the Indian Ocean. Somaliland's 850-kilometer coastline overlooks the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, a choke point for 10% of global trade and a vital artery for Israel's imports, exports, and energy supplies. With Houthi rebels threatening shipping and regional instability on the rise, Israel urgently needs a stable partner on the southern shore to help safeguard these critical waters. The move also serves to counter Iranian influence in the region, giving Israel a valuable foothold to monitor, deter, and potentially disrupt hostile activities that threaten its security. The UAE, a key Abraham Accords partner, has invested heavily in Somaliland's Berbera port, transforming it into a regional logistics hub and further cementing this emerging alliance. This new bloc, Israel, the UAE, and Somaliland, directly challenges rivals like Turkey, Qatar, and Egypt, who back Somalia's government and compete for influence in the Horn of Africa. Integrating Somaliland into the Abraham Accords expands Israel's periphery doctrine, forging unconventional partnerships and creating new security arrangements in a volatile region. Unconfirmed reports of Israeli security cooperation in Somaliland hint at a long-term strategic commitment, one that could reshape the balance of power at the Bab el-Mandeb for years to come. South Sudan's support for Somaliland is deeply personal, a reflection of its own hard-won independence. Both nations emerged from failed unions and brutal oppression, forging new identities through struggle. By backing Somaliland, South Sudan champions self-determination and challenges the African Union's rigid border doctrine. This move allows Juba to recast itself as a principled regional actor, not just a recipient of aid. South Sudan's endorsement provides crucial African validation, reframing Somaliland's quest as a correction of historical injustice. It signals to other African nations that supporting Somaliland isn't betrayal, but a stand for justice. Together, Juba and Hargeisa forge a new alliance, one born from the shared pursuit of freedom. Recognition in international diplomacy is transformative. It's the key that unlocks full participation in the global system. While Somaliland meets all legal criteria for statehood, only recognition by other states grants access to international institutions, finance, and treaties. Israel's move skipped the usual gradual steps, going straight to full recognition, an unprecedented leap. For Somaliland, this means potential access to development finance, global trade, and diplomatic equality. Without recognition, Somaliland remains isolated, its economy stifled and its sovereignty unprotected. For 3 decades, it has existed in diplomatic limbo, its achievements overshadowed by non-recognition. Israel and South Sudan's actions are the first cracks in this wall, offering hope that legitimacy is finally within reach. The path to full acceptance is still long, but the door is now open. In Mogadishu, Israel's recognition of Somaliland was met with outrage and alarm. Somalia's government denounced the move as an illegal violation of its sovereignty, launching a diplomatic offensive at the Arab League and African Union. Officials warned that legitimizing Somaliland could empower extremists and destabilize the region. Yet Somalia hasn't controlled Somaliland for over 30 years. While Mogadishu battled chaos, Somaliland built a peaceful, functioning state. Unlike other Somali regions, Somaliland's claim is rooted in its prior independence and voluntary union, later revoked. Somalia's refusal to acknowledge this unique history is at the heart of the dispute, now thrust onto the world stage. The standoff is no longer just a Somali issue, it's a global diplomatic crisis. The international response to Israel's recognition of Somaliland was swift and overwhelmingly negative. The African Union, Arab League, and Gulf states condemned the move, fearing it could trigger a wave of secessionist movements. The EU and a bloc of 21 nations, including Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey, backed Somalia's position. At the UN, China and Russia drew parallels to their own territorial disputes, reinforcing the global resistance. Yet, beneath the surface, cracks are emerging. The US, while officially supporting Somalia, has avoided direct criticism and increased cooperation with Somaliland. Ethiopia, needing sea access, remains ambivalent, publicly condemning, but privately hedging its bets. The official front is unified, but shifting interests suggest a more fractured reality. The diplomatic landscape is changing, even as old doctrines hold sway. Somaliland's recognition is unfolding in one of the world's most contested maritime regions. The Red Sea and Gulf of Aden are vital trade arteries, now threatened by conflict and piracy. A stable Somaliland offers international navies a secure partner and logistical hub at Berbera, enhancing regional security. The emerging Israel-UAE-Somaliland axis is reshaping power dynamics, countering rivals like Turkey, Qatar, and Egypt. Ethiopia eyes Berbera as a lifeline, while global powers vie for influence. Somaliland's strategic location is now its greatest asset, attracting suitors and leverage, its challenge balancing competing interests to secure sovereignty and development. Israel and South Sudan's recognition of Somaliland breaks a decades-long stalemate in the Horn of Africa. The diplomatic blockade is no longer impenetrable. Somaliland's status is now a live, high-stakes issue. The African Union faces a test should colonial borders always trump self-determination, even in unique cases like Somaliland. South Sudan's support amplifies the debate, forcing a re-examination of old doctrines. While full recognition remains distant, a psychological barrier has been breached. Other nations may now follow. Somaliland's strategic leverage has never been greater, and Somalia must confront the limits of its claims. The region enters a new era of shifting alliances and competition, with Somaliland at the center. The journey isn't over, but for the first time, the end is in sight. As the dust settles on this diplomatic breakthrough, the question now turns to Somaliland's future on the world stage. With the precedent set by Israel and South Sudan, a window of opportunity opens wider than ever before. Behind closed doors, other nations quietly weigh their options, considering the benefits and risks of recognizing Somaliland. Regional powerhouses like Ethiopia and Egypt could soon play pivotal roles, driven by strategic interests at the Red Sea gateway. International organizations, once bound by old doctrines, may find themselves under mounting pressure to reconsider their stance. Economic partnerships, security cooperation, and investment deals are now well within reach, as foreign governments and corporations look to tap into Somaliland's stability and resources. Yet, challenges remain: diplomatic pushback from Somalia, skepticism from the African Union, and the ever-present risk of regional instability. For Somaliland, the path forward will demand careful diplomacy, internal unity, and a clear vision for its role in the Horn of Africa. The world is watching. Will more nations break ranks and extend recognition, or will geopolitical caution prevail? The next chapter in Somaliland's quest for international legitimacy is about to unfold, and its choices today will shape the region for generations to come. But even as Somaliland stands on the threshold of a new era, the road ahead is anything but smooth. The promise of international recognition brings with it a host of complex challenges, both old and new. First, there's the issue of internal cohesion. Somaliland's political stability is often cited as a strength, but deep-seated clan divisions and periodic disputes over governance threaten to undermine unity from within. Leaders must work tirelessly to ensure that the pursuit of recognition does not fracture the social fabric or marginalize key groups. Externally, Somalia's fierce opposition remains a constant. Mogadishu's diplomatic campaign against Somaliland's independence is likely to intensify, potentially leading to increased tensions or even open confrontation along disputed borders. The risk of proxy conflicts, fueled by external actors with competing interests, cannot be underestimated. Economically, newfound attention could prove to be a double-edged sword. While foreign investment promises growth, it also brings the dangers of corruption, exploitation, and unsustainable development. Somaliland's leaders will need to balance openness with vigilance, safeguarding sovereignty over their resources. On the global stage, recognition from a handful of countries may not be enough. Without broader international consensus, Somaliland could find itself in a diplomatic limbo, caught between hope and hesitation, with limited access to global financial systems and aid. Finally, there's the ever-present shadow of regional instability. The Horn of Africa is a volatile neighborhood, and any misstep could draw Somaliland into wider conflicts or disrupt fragile alliances. The journey toward full statehood is far from over. For Somaliland, success will depend not just on external validation, but on the strength of its institutions, the wisdom of its leaders, and the resilience of its people. The world may be watching, but only Somaliland can write the next chapter of its story.